Steps into it, pass is caught, Diggs, sideline, touchdown, unbelievable!
Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler. Unreal. Touchdown, Kansas City! Damian Williams runs to immortality and will be remembered forever in the Chiefs' kingdom.
And welcome in once again to another episode of Talkin American Footy on KC Radio 97.7 FM. I'm your host, Brent Sternberg, and here we are on Sunday night, another Sunday night for NFL Week 4, which kicked off on Thursday night / Friday morning our time and will continue tomorrow morning. Can you believe we're back here again, another Sunday night, like I say, on the eve of Week 4. This NFL season is going very, very fast indeed. It feels like only a few days ago we were here having a chat about Week 1 and the fact that, rejoicing in the fact that the NFL was back, and now Week 4 is underway. It was an incredible Week 3 last week. I did leave the show last week saying that I thought there was going to be a bunch of great games and a bunch of great contests, and there was. So I'm going to go back and have a look at all the results from Week 3, and there were some teams who had some really big wins last week and some teams who had some really poor losses, and then we'll take a break, and when we come back from the break we'll start to have a look at the rest of the games to go in Week 4. But turning our attention back to Week 3, all the way back to last Thursday, it was the two Florida teams doing battle on Thursday night football between Miami and Jacksonville, and it was the Miami Dolphins that were victorious in that one, 31-13. A really good showing there by Ryan Fitzpatrick, who had a really good night and connected on his first 12 passes, and he threw for a bunch of yards and a couple of touchdowns in that one, and looked good as a rusher as well. Not bad for a guy who's in his late 30s and still in the league and running around there. So Miami, 31-13 winners there, and that's their first win, the Dolphins, by double-digit points since Week 13 of 2017. So that would have been when Ryan Tannehill was there. So that's a good win for the Dolphins. They are 1-2 now going into this week's action, and then on Sunday afternoon, Monday morning. The Atlanta Falcons. This is the first game we're going to look at. The Falcons, who have done it again. They've blown another lead, this time to the Chicago Bears. The Bears got home in that one 30-26. Chicago trailed 26-10 going into the fourth quarter. And then they made the switch at halftime. They benched Mitchell Trubisky. They brought in Nick Foles. And then he threw 3 touchdowns in the last quarter, Nick Foles coming off the bench. And they scored 20 unanswered points, Chicago, in that last quarter to come from behind and beat Atlanta, who have now thrown away 2 good leads in the last quarter in the last 2 weeks. Nick Foles in that one finished 16 of 29 with 188 yards, 3 touchdowns, as I say, all in the last quarter, and an interception. They made that change at halftime, Chicago, and I don't think they were expecting to, certainly not to win that game. They may have been expecting to get back into it somehow, but here they are with another win, Chicago, and now they're 3-0. So they've had some quarterback issues. They've flip-flopped between Trubisky and Foles, and now they find themselves 3-0, which is incredible. Who would have thought? The other game there, the Bills and the Rams, this is one that I flagged as a game to watch, and this was the beauty as well. The Rams, they were behind in this one. They trailed the Bills 28-3 in the third quarter, and the Rams outscored the Bills 29-14. In the second half. So they rallied late, the Rams, but the Bills just did enough to hold on in that one. Josh Allen continues his great start, 311 yards, 4 touchdowns and an interception in that one. It was actually 2 young quarterbacks who played quite well. Jared Goff was good in that one too, 321 yards, a touchdown and a pick. But the Bills victorious 35-32, a high-scoring affair, and the Bills are now 3-0. And looking really good behind their young quarterback, Josh Allen, who is in MVP contention. I said that this week, and he didn't do himself any harm in that game. The Browns, they beat Washington 34-20. Dwayne Haskins, he's struggling a little bit, 21 of 37, 224 yards, 2 touchdowns, but worryingly 3 interceptions, and the clock might be ticking on Dwayne Haskins. Nick Chubb was the big story for that one there in Cleveland, or for Cleveland, I should say. 19 rushing attempts, 108 yards for 2 touchdowns. Incredibly, 5.7 yards per rush on average. So that was incredible. And Chubb, he's now the 3rd player in Cleveland history with consecutive games of 100-plus rushing yards and at least 2 rushing touchdowns, joining Hall of Famers Leroy Kelly and Jim Brown. So there's some pretty illustrious company there. So Cleveland win that one, and they're looking okay to start the season there. Cleveland Titans at Minnesota. They needed a Stephen Gostkowski 55-yard field goal to win that one. He had a bit of a rough week a couple of weeks ago, Stephen Gostkowski, but he was pretty good in that one. I think he was 5 for 5, I think, and a 55-yard field goal to win that one. Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson, the rookie, were enormous for the Vikings, but they just couldn't get the job done. Dalvin Cook had a career high, actually, 181 yards off 22 attempts, and a rushing touchdown as well. And Justin Jefferson, 7 catches for 175 yards and a touchdown. But at home, the Vikings couldn't get the job done. They were beaten by 1 point, 31-30, and they fall now, I should say, to 0-3. The Patriots and the Raiders. This was a really strong performance at home from the Patriots. 36-20 winners over the Las Vegas Raiders. Rex Burkhead, 98 scrimmage yards and 3 touchdowns in that one. The Patriots defense played quite well. They completely shut down Darren Waller and Josh Jacobs, and they had a safety in that one too. And they haven't had the best of starts this year, the Patriots defense, but winners in that one by 16 points. The Niners and the Giants. The Niners went back out to New York, where they lost a bunch of guys to injury last week, and they just absolutely made light work of the Giants, 36-9. Nick Mullins started in that one, and he looks like he'll start again tomorrow. He threw 343 yards and a touchdown. Without George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, and his 2 number 1 running backs, Raheem Mostert and Tevin Coleman. So well done there to Nick Mullins and the 49ers, who get their 2nd win of the season. They're 2-1 despite all of their injuries. The Eagles and the Bengals played in our first tie of the season. Joe Burrow, Cincinnati looked like they found their quarterback. Joe Burrow, 31 of 44, 312 yards, 2 touchdowns and no interceptions. I guess the big one in that game was the Eagles' decision to punt in that last quarter. I think there was only like 16 seconds left, and they sort of waved the white flag a little bit and punted in that one, and some people ripped them for that decision. But I suppose, not much can happen in the last sort of 20 seconds. It would be a bit of a disaster if Cincinnati found a way to win late in that one. So they pretty much just, they said, there's only 3 things that can happen in a football game. And the worst of them, obviously, is a loss, and the other 2 are better than a loss, one of those being a tie. So it was a 23-all tie there between Philadelphia and Cincinnati. Philadelphia are in a little bit of trouble early on in this season, particularly their quarterback, Carson Wentz. The Steelers, they beat the Texans 28-21. Played a good first half, actually, the Texans. Deshaun Watson, he finished the first half 14 of 18 for 202 yards and 2 touchdowns. But their offense was held to just 51 yards and 2 first downs in the final 2 quarters. In the second half, the Steelers' defense, they just got better and better as that one went on, and they just suffocated the Texans. James Conner and rookie running back for the Steelers, Anthony McFarland, they went over 150 yards combined on just 24 carries. So they're starting to get the running game up and going, Pittsburgh, with Big Ben looking okay as well. The Indianapolis Colts, they were coming off a win against Minnesota. They were back at home, and they played the Jets, and they smacked the Jets 36-7. Phillip Rivers reached a pair of personal milestones in that one. He threw his 400th touchdown, and he passed 60,000 passing yards as well. It was a huge day to the Colts defense. 2 pick sixes and a safety, so not a bad outing there. And the Colts winners in that one over the Jets. The Panthers and the Chargers. Panthers did well there. They snapped a long losing streak, in fact, a 10-game losing streak. dating back to last season. They beat the Chargers 21-16. Justin Herbert, he might have been disappointed with the fact that they lost that game, but he still had an okay performance. He threw a touchdown and 300 yards, or 300 yards, I should say. And he did have an interception, though, and a lost fumble. So showed some signs, Justin Herbert, but had some moments he would have liked back. They had a late lateral on that last drive that they mucked up between Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler that would have won them that game, but they go down to the Carolina Panthers. The Lions and the Cardinals, the Lions finally got on the board. They beat Arizona 26-23 through a Matt Prater 39-yard game winner. Rookie cornerback Jeff Okudah had his first interception of his career, which set up that game-winning field goal. And Kyler Murray come back down to earth a little bit, 23 of 35, 270 yards, 2 touchdowns, but 3 interceptions. That's okay. I think Arizona will be okay, but they'll be disappointed that they let that one slip. The Bucks, they went to Denver and they beat the Broncos 28-10. The Bucks defense, 6 sacks, a forced fumble, 2 interceptions, and a safety. So a good day for the Buccaneers on defense there. And on offense, how about Mike Evans? He had 2 receptions for 2 yards and 2 touchdowns. So some good efficiency there for Mike Evans. The Bucks victorious in that one. Seahawks and the Cowboys, this was a really good game, actually. The Seahawks victorious in that one, 38-31. Russell Wilson, that is 14 passing touchdowns through the first 3 weeks, which is an NFL record. And Dak Prescott is doing all he can, 37 of 57, 472 yards, 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. I think he's actually leading the league in passing as well, Dak Prescott. So he's not really getting a whole lot of help, but he's playing well. On Sunday Night Football, the Packers beat the Saints 37-30. That was their first win in New Orleans. That was, of course, on the road. Their first win, the Packers, in New Orleans since 1995. New Orleans, their penalties just continue to haunt them. They had 8 for 83 yards against the Packers. They looked a little bit better, particularly Drew Brees, but they went down to the Packers. And then Monday Night Football, what a statement from the Kansas City Chiefs. They beat the Ravens 34-20. Patrick Mahomes, 34 of 42, 385 yards and 4 touchdowns. And the defense deserves some credit too. They absolutely shut down Baltimore. They allowed only 70 passing yards and 228 yards of total offense. That was the final game of the week. For me, they were the biggest winner of week 3. I think a lot of people, including me, had Baltimore as maybe the best team in the league through the first couple of weeks, and we thought they might be able to make a statement of their own at home on Monday Night Football, but that was not the case. Kansas City just they sort of cleared their throats and said, excuse me, we're still the reigning champions, and if you want to win this Super Bowl, you've got to come through us. So that was the biggest win of week 3. Well done, Kansas City. They are the best team in the league right now, and they showed that with a statement victory. The biggest loser was Arizona. They should have beaten Detroit. That was at home, and they've fallen to. They are 2-1 now. That was their first loss. And they'll be pretty keen to get back on the horse and get back on the winners list this week. They would have expected to win that game, but it's a difficult league to just reel off wins each week. So Arizona, probably the most disappointing loser, I think, in week 3. So that was a recap of week 3. I'll take a quick little break, and when we return, we'll turn our attention to week 4. I'm talking American footy with me, Brent Sternberg. You're listening to KC Radio 97.7 FM. Back in a sec. Welcome back, gang. You're listening to Talkin' American Footy on KC Radio 97.7 FM this Sunday night with me, Brent Sternberg. Before the ad break, we had a bit of a recap of what happened in week 3 last week in the NFL. A crazy week with some magnificent games, and now we turn our attention to have a look at week 4, which has begun. We are 1 game down in week 4, and that was a Thursday night football game between the Denver Broncos and the New York Jets in New York. This was a game in prime time that a lot of people sort of wondered how on earth they got a prime time slot, these two teams, but it was the Denver Broncos victorious in this one over the Jets 37-28, and not a bad performance at all by the Broncos quarterback Brett Rippon, who was making his his first start for the Broncos. 19 of 31 passing attempts, 242 yards. He threw a couple of touchdowns. He threw 3 interceptions, 2 of which were pretty bad ones in the last quarter. The first one came on a really bizarre pass that he looked like he was trying to just throw away. And of course, it was intercepted. So other than a couple of poor errors, he actually played okay and orchestrated a nice win there for the Broncos. So I don't know, maybe a bit of a quarterback controversy when Drew Lock is back from that shoulder injury. Maybe not. I mean, they did spend a second round pick on Drew Lock, didn't they? So I assume he's the guy there. But I did see them sitting on the bench towards the back end of that game, and Drew Lock giving him some advice. And I just wondered, I wonder when Drew Lock is fit and firing, if they can reel off a couple of wins with Brett Ripien, will they have a decision to make? The Jets, they're going to have a decision to make in a lot of different areas. Maybe on Sam Darnold, maybe on Adam Gase. This is going to be a long season for this franchise. I've said this already quite a bit with the Jets, haven't I? Sam Darnold didn't play too badly. 23 of 42, 230 yards. Didn't have a touchdown. Didn't have an interception either. Had that really nice rushing touchdown early on in that one, and then hurt his shoulder, and we thought it might have been a real serious one, but he actually come back on a little while later. Worryingly for the Jets, they've started 0-4 for the second season in a row, which is the first time that they've ever done that. So not a good start for the Jets, and this is a franchise that knows all about losing. Anyway, let's move on from the New York Jets, shall we? And we're going to have a look at all the games in the 1 p.m. time slot. Now, remember, folks, this is generally the 3 a.m. time slot, but with daylight savings, of course, it's 4 a.m. So we get a little bit more sleep before we get to jump out of bed and have a look at our teams play, if indeed your teams are playing in this early time slot. And the first game here, Baltimore and Washington. Baltimore, of course, going down on Monday Night Football to the Chiefs in a game where they didn't really fire a shot, did they? It had a little bit of that feel similar to that loss in the playoffs against the Titans and to the loss in the playoffs against the Chargers the year before, where Baltimore, they were just comprehensively beaten, and they missed an opportunity to beat Kansas City and to assert themselves as the number one team in the AFC, and looking for that first round bye. Of course, the team that has the number one seed in the AFC and the NFC will have the first round bye. Generally, it's been teams 1 and 2 this year. With the seventh seed coming in, it'll be just team number 1. So blew a bit of an opportunity there. They have they've had more than 100 yards, rushing yards, that is, in 26 straight games. So Washington are going to have their hands full with that running game. Haskins, I mentioned before the break, had 4 turnovers, 3 picks and a fumble in that game. Ron Rivera, after the game, said that there will be a cutoff point for Dwayne Haskins as the team starter. Remember, Ron Rivera and this regime there now, they're not the regime that drafted Dwayne Haskins. So we'll see what happens there. I think it's good news for Baltimore that they get to run into Washington the week after they go down to Kansas City, and I think they'll rebound on the road with a comfortable win. The LA Chargers, they lost to Carolina. They're on the road to Tampa Bay. This is going to be an interesting one, and Justin Herbert in his third start will be going up against a really good Tampa Bay defense that not too many people are talking about. They don't have really a whole lot of household names except for maybe Shaq Barrett, who finished with a pair of sacks last week, the second of which resulted in a safety. Of course, the sacks leader from last year, he's at it again. Joey Bosa on the other side of the ball for the Chargers. He's one of only 3 players with a sack in each 3 games to start this season. The Bucks, they're back at home after playing on the road, and they're getting warmer. They are getting warmer. Tampa Bay, they sit on top of that division. And I, based on what I've seen through the first 3 weeks, I think they might be there to stay, and I think they're going to get a win at home over the LA Chargers. The Seattle Seahawks, the red-hot Seattle Seahawks, they go to Miami. Seattle are 3-0 to start this season for the first time since 2013. That was the season they made the Super Bowl, and they made light work of Denver in that Super Bowl. Their defense, though, Seattle, it remains a major area of concern. one that received a real setback on Sunday with Jamal Adams going down with a groin injury, and they had other guys as well go down to injury too in that secondary. And then you've got the Dolphins, who were unstoppable on offense out of the gate last week against Jacksonville, piling up 12 first downs in the first quarter, which was the most for a Miami offense in an opening quarter in 20 years. So couple the Miami offense, which isn't going too badly, with the Seattle defense, which frankly is going badly. And this could be an interesting game, but Seattle, I've said a couple of times, they've had a great record on the road, and I think they're going to win this one and go to 4-0. That is my prediction there. Next up is a massive game between two teams that made the playoffs last year and in fact won a playoff game, and they now have both started 0-3, and that's the Minnesota Vikings at Houston. The Vikings defense, they allowed 444 yards and 444 yards last week and 119 rushing yards to Derrick Henry, and multiple deep strikes as well that Ryan Tannehill connected on. They just look like a really just a poor team at the moment, Minnesota. They had Delvin Cook set a career high, like I said, 181 rushing yards and a touchdown. And the rookie Justin Jefferson broke out with a huge game, 175 yards and a touchdown. But even that wasn't enough to get the win. And their defense just couldn't stop Tennessee, on that final drive, going down the field and kicking that field goal that gave them the lead in the end, and they managed to hold on there, Tennessee. Deshaun Watson, interestingly, he's 4-5 against NFC teams, and this game is at home in Houston. This is a really, really tricky one for me to pick. Two teams that have been disappointing, albeit Houston have played three pretty good teams, Kansas City, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh, and they looked okay against Pittsburgh early on, but just couldn't go on with it. I'm going to back in the Houston Texans at home here because I just have a little bit more faith in Deshaun Watson being able to pull out a few more plays than the Vikings, who it is the perfect time to panic for the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, they've started 0-3, and they're looking up now at two teams in this division that are 3-0 in the Packers and the Bears, who have both started quite well. So for the Minnesota Vikings, they need to pull their finger out, and they need to pull their finger out now, or this season is going to get away from them. The next game, New Orleans, fresh off a loss at home to the Packers, they go to Detroit, who were good enough to get a win against Arizona last week. The Saints haven't lost 3 straight games since 2016. That was a season in which they started 0-3. So weeks 1, 2, and 3 were the games that they lost. So that's an incredible stat for a team that have won more regular season games than anybody else over the last 3 seasons. This is an interesting game back in Detroit. Can Detroit back up with a win after beating Arizona last week? Matt Stafford looked okay, but ultimately they had to rely on a Matt Prater field goal to get over the line there. New Orleans, they looked a little bit better. They'll be disappointed that they lost at home. They always expect to win at home, but I feel a little bit better about the Saints and about Drew Brees after that game. So I'm going to pick New Orleans to go on the road and get another win here over the Detroit Lions, who I think escaped a little bit with a win last week. Cleveland at Dallas. This will be a nice game, actually. The Browns, 30-plus points in 2 straight games for the first time since 2010. So their offense is starting to do some things I think they can do some things as well tomorrow against a Cowboys defense that is a major concern. Russell Wilson absolutely lit up the secondary last week for 5 touchdowns. And, of course, it would have been 6 if not for that absolute brain fade. I'm sure you guys saw it, that DK Metcalf waltzing on into the end zone, and he sort of just fell asleep, and as he got to the goal line, it was punched out of his hands. So it could have been 6. And can I just say, Dak Prescott is playing perhaps the most ridiculed position in all of North American sports, and that is quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, and he's doing a really good job. Or better than that, he's carrying this team. So some more kudos to Dak Prescott, and I think he's doing all he can to get some money or the money that he wants anyway. And they got to sign him up. I think Dallas win at home here in what I think could be a shootout. Jacksonville and Cincinnati is the next game. An opportunity for either of these teams to get a win. The Bengals are allowing the most rushing yards per game through 3 weeks, 154.1 yards, and that's bad news with James Robinson, who's been a great find for the Jags, coming off a really big game where he had over 100 rushing yards and a touchdown and a receiving touchdown as well, I think. And the Jags, they looked helpless last week with no DJ Chark, didn't they? Gardner Minshew was 0 for 5 on throws of more than 10 yards down the field. I think Cincinnati get a win here. Joe Burrow for his, I think that would be his first win of the season, wouldn't it? So Cincinnati at home. Indianapolis and Chicago. That's in Chicago. Phillip Rivers, the 6th quarterback in NFL history with 400-plus passing yards. They run into a Chicago team who are 3-0, surprisingly, but their total of victory has been by 12 points combined, winning their 3 games by an accumulative total of 12 points. Nick Foles to start that one as well. I'm going to say Chicago at home. There's something happening here with Chicago, and I like Nick Foles starting more so than I do Mitch Trubisky, so I'm going with Chicago at home. Arizona and Carolina, a chance for Arizona to get back on the winners list. Kyler Murray threw for 3 interceptions and almost a 4th on Sunday and was held to just 29 rushing yards. Carolina, that was their first win since week 9 last season. I mentioned that. And their defense with all the young players has been okay. They had 8 quarterback hits, 2 sacks and 4 turnovers last week, Carolina. And they've got a serious 1-2 punch at wide receiver with DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. So this is in Carolina, but I'm going to say Arizona go in there and win on the road and get a win on the board. That's it for the 1 p.m. games. There is a game that has been postponed. The first game that feels the effects of the COVID positive test. So it's the first game that has been altered. Initially, there was 3 players and 5 staff from the Titans that tested positive. Another round of testing on Tuesday revealed 1 additional Titans player tested positive. So this game has been postponed. It's looking like it's going to be played in week 7. This game, it was looking like being a good game too, between 2 3-0 teams who sit atop their division. The margin of victory for the Titans in their 3 wins has been 2, 3, and 1 point, so they're doing it the hard way. And the Steelers are 3-0 for the first time since 2010, a year in which they won the Super Bowl. So that game won't be on tomorrow. It's been postponed. So that's it for the 1 p.m. slate of games. I'll be back after the break to have a look at the mid-afternoon games for week 4 and talking American footy with me, Brent Sternberg. You're listening to KC Radio 97.7 FM. Back shortly. Welcome back. You're listening to Talkin' American Footy with Brent Sternberg on KC Radio 97.7 FM. Before the break, we had a little bit of a preview of all of the games in the first window tomorrow morning, which of course for the Eastern Seaboard states that observe daylight savings will be on at 4 a.m. tomorrow and not the customary 3 a.m. Before the break, I just touched on the Pittsburgh-Tennessee game, which is going to be postponed, and I said it's looking like it might be postponed to week 7. I just want to pull that apart a little bit more. So in week 7, Tennessee are scheduled to have their bye week. Pittsburgh were scheduled to play Baltimore. They've got a little bit of flexibility, the NFL, because Pittsburgh and Baltimore actually have their bye week the following week in week 8. So it's looking like what will happen is in week 7, Pittsburgh will play Tennessee instead of Baltimore. And Baltimore will have their bye week in week 7. And then they will play the Steelers the week after in week 8, which is a week that's open for both of those teams. So effectively, Tennessee will have their bye week this week. And Pittsburgh will play the Titans in week 7. Baltimore will have their bye week in week 7. And then the Steelers and Baltimore will play in week 8. So it'll be as you were a little bit. But that's, of course, assuming that this is the only game that is mucked around because of COVID-19, and let's hope that it is, because it's going to be an absolute nightmare if we have some games postponed and cancelled and whatnot. And I mean, you can't just bank on being able to reschedule teams because teams share buys or whatever. We could have the fixture completely turned upside down. But let's hope, so far, 4 weeks in, that's the only game that's been turned upside down, and let's hope that that's the only one. On to the mid-afternoon games now in the NFL. Tomorrow, the first game here at 7:05 Australian daylight time is the New York Giants, who go out to LA to play the Rams. The Rams are back at home in their new stadium. The Giants, they got beaten by, I've already forgotten what happened last week for the Giants. Beaten by San Francisco, that's right. And comfortably as well, in a game where really a second-string quarterback tore their defense apart in Nick Mullins. The Giants quarterback Daniel Jones is having another season in which he's struggling with turnover issues. He threw an interception and was also charged with another lost fumble. So he really needs to clear that up if they're going to amount to anything this year. The Giants, particularly, of course, with Saquon Barkley not returning. The Giants won just one game. Speaking of Saquon Barkley, they won one game without Barkley, or have won one game, I should say, without Barkley since last season. And they have averaged in that time just 14.5 points per game. And of course, they only scored 9 points last week. And they're coming up against a Rams team that put 32 points on the board last week. They come from behind, but unfortunately, they just left it a little bit too late, but did well to get back into that game. The Rams had the Bills facing a 3rd and 22 from their own 31, and a 3rd and 25 from the Rams 30, and they allowed the Bills to convert on both of those attempts. And of course, the Bills went down the field and regained the lead. Aaron Donald was good in that game. He had a couple of sacks, but I mean, you can't be allowing teams to convert, in those situations. So I don't think they'll have too many issues with the Giants in this one, the Rams, and I think they will go to 3-1 after this game. Another really good game that I'm looking forward to, and another team back in their new stadium, is the Las Vegas Raiders. They welcome the undefeated Buffalo Bills to town. And this is going to be a good opportunity to see how Josh Allen goes again. 300 passing yards in 3 straight games now to start the season for Josh Allen. And they have the third best offense through 3 weeks in terms of points per game. They're averaging 31 points per game. So they're on fire, the Bills and that offense, and the defense is doing their part too. The Raiders, they were outscored. They actually shut out the Patriots in Foxborough in the first quarter last week, and then they were outscored 36-17 through the last 3 quarters, and they went on the Raiders to give up 406 yards in total in that one. So I think it could be another game where if they don't tighten up defensively, the Raiders, they may be in for another game where the opposing offense just does as they please. And really, Josh Allen at the moment is doing as he pleases. So a game between 2 teams coming into the season that I thought could push for the playoffs. In fact, I picked both teams to win the playoffs, and I picked Buffalo to win that division. Hopefully, the Raiders will be hoping that Darren Waller, the tight end, and Josh Jacobs can have a little bit better of an output than they did last week, particularly Josh Jacobs. I think he only rushed for 76 yards or something like that. So I'm going to pick Buffalo in that one in Sin City. The next game here is Kansas City at New England. This should be an interesting one. That's at Foxborough, of course. Mahomes, he's accounted for 5 touchdowns last week, and he's the fastest quarterback in league history to throw for 10,000 yards. I dare say he's going to be a quarterback who breaks a lot of milestones in his career. The Chiefs have not lost a game since last November. So they're on quite a winning streak, going back to sort of down the stretch last season, and then into the playoffs as well. And to be honest, I don't really see the Chiefs losing losing too many games. They've won 3 of the last 4 against the Patriots. The last one, of course, was that game in the 2018 AFC Championship game, that one that went to overtime, and really they only lost that game because Dee Ford jumped offside and gave the Patriots a mulligan on a play where Tom Brady threw that interception. The Patriots have been a surprising one this year. I know we come into this season and we didn't really know what to expect. You know, with Tom Brady gone, the Patriots without Tom Brady for the first time in 20 years, Cam Newton coming in, former MVP, but, you know, struggled with injuries and with form a little bit in these last couple of years at Carolina, but they look really good, and Cam Newton has, you know, been running around and throwing the ball really well, and it looks like Bill Belichick has got a good game plan there that really suits Cam Newton. So you can't go past Kansas City in this game, but even though I think they may go down in this one, New England, I think that this is an opportunity to show everyone that they haven't fallen away and out of contention like a lot of people thought that they may have, and to be honest, like a lot of people hoped they may have. You know, a lot of people in this league with New England fatigue, and rightly so. But I think Kansas City will win this game. But a chance for New England to show that they're not that far off the pace. Sunday night football, and 2 teams, one team in particular has struggled, and another one that has lost a lot of players from injury, but may get a couple back tomorrow for Sunday night football. It's the Philadelphia Eagles at San Francisco. Carson Wentz, he continues to struggle. He has 3 straight games now with multiple interceptions. I know he's had a wide receiver core there that has been banged up and has struggled a little bit. The number 1 draft pick, Jalen Reagor, didn't play. He's on injured reserve, and they've had a couple of guys on the offensive line come in. But Carson Wentz, man, he doesn't look good. And I wonder, they drafted Jalen Hurts in the 2nd round in the draft last year, or this year, I should say, which raised the eyebrows of a lot of people. I wonder how much longer we will go before we maybe see Jalen Hurts come in. I know Doug Peterson was asked that during the week, and he scoffed at that suggestion. But man, if Wentz continues to struggle, and if Philadelphia, who are in a division that it's not running away from them. I mean, you've got Washington in top spot going into week 4, and they're 1-2. So if Carson Wentz continues to struggle, I wonder if they will be tempted to pull the trigger on Jalen Hurts. We'll see. Wentz 6 interceptions in 3 games. That's 1 less than he had last year in 16 games that he started. Just 1 less, and he's only played 3 games. That's incredible, and he's going up against the Niners defense that has a couple of players out, but certainly has enough players still in there to worry him. They ran 73 plays last week, San Francisco, against the Giants. They held the ball for nearly 40 minutes, and they didn't punt. They did not punt the ball last week, San Francisco. Mitch Wishnowsky, the Aussie, of course, he may as well have not even gone to the game. He just sat on the bench all day. That was the first time San Francisco played in a game where they didn't punt in 27 years. So quite an effort for them. San Francisco, it's their 4th straight game, can you believe, against a winless team. All 4 games this season they've played the Niners. They've played against teams going into that game that hadn't won a game. And of course, Philadelphia come to San Francisco with flowers in their hair, maybe? I don't know. There's not going to be too many people who actually get that joke. I shouldn't have said it. But I think Philadelphia will go down in this one, and San Francisco, who I put a line through last week in terms of winning the Super Bowl, go to 3-1 if they win, and Nick Mullins looks like he's going to start again. San Francisco to win in that one. And now on to Monday Night Football, and this could be a one-sided affair. The Atlanta Falcons, who have thrown away 2 big leads in the last couple of games. They're 0-3, Atlanta, for the first time since 2007, but they're playing like a team that are better than that. Their offense is playing okay. They've got Calvin Ridley in year 3, who is doing wonders for everyone that has him in fantasy, including yours truly. He's having a really good year. Todd Gurley's playing okay. Matt Ryan's playing okay. He probably should shoulder some of the blame from last week. He missed some wide open throws and there were some drop catches as well. He's got his number one receiver, Julio Jones, who's struggling a little bit. But it's really the defense who are just not closing out games. They're missing tackles. You know, they're not getting home when they should be, but they're playing better than a 0-3 team. And like I say, they find themselves at that point for the first time since 2007, and they run into a Green Bay Packers team who have scored 30-plus points or more in all three games. So this is not a good matchup for the Atlanta Falcons. 30-plus points in all three games so far and have scored a team record 122 points through those three games. So just think about that. This is a Packers franchise that has had some really good offenses, of course, with Brett Favre, the late Bart Starr as well through the 60s, won 4 Super Bowls, played in a couple of others. They've had some good offenses, and this is the most points they've scored through 3 weeks. So there were some people who were very wrong about the Green Bay Packers coming into this season, and I was one of them, and I'm not ashamed to say that. I don't think I picked them to make the playoffs, and here they are in some really good nick. Alan Lazard stepped up last week. They've been waiting for someone to step up alongside Devontae Adams. 6 catches for Lazard, 146 yards, and a touchdown on 8 targets out of the guy who was an undrafted player out of Iowa State. I did see during the week, though, Adam Schefter reported that he's had, I think, core muscle surgery. So they finally get someone who steps up, the Packers, and now they're out through injury. So they are the late afternoon games, and they are all the games for week 2. Just quickly, I'm picking Baltimore to bounce back and beat Washington on the road. I'm picking Tampa Bay to win at home to the Chargers, picking Seattle to win in Miami, Houston to get their first win as they welcome Minnesota to town. New Orleans will go to Detroit and win, I think. Dallas at home will beat Cleveland. Cincinnati will get their first win, and so will Joe Burrow against Jacksonville. Chicago to go to 4-0. They will beat Indianapolis. Arizona will beat Carolina. Pittsburgh and Tennessee postponed. The Rams will beat the Giants at home. Buffalo will go to Sin City and beat the Raiders. Kansas City, I think, will make light work of New England. And on Sunday Night Football, San Francisco will win. And on Monday Night Football, Green Bay will win and win comfortably, I think. I'm going to take another break here, my final break. And when I return, we'll have a look at college football and what happened last week. And I'll answer some questions that you guys have shot through as well. You're listening to Talkin American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg, on KC Radio 97.7 FM. Welcome back, gang. You're listening to Talkin American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg, on KC Radio 97.7 FM. We've gone through and had a recap of week 3 in the NFL, and we had a look ahead also to week 4 and the games to come tomorrow. Let's have a little look now, as I like to do in the final segments, at what is happening in college football. And it was a really big week in college football last week with the SEC schools back in action. So we're waiting now for the Big Ten to return in just under 3 weeks' time on October 24, and then the Pac-12 will be back about a month or so later, and then we'll have everyone back together again as one big happy college football family, or not. Anyway, week 4 last week, as I say, the SEC schools were back in action. So let's just have a look at some of these results. So the University of Florida, who have opened the season ranked number 3 in the country, they beat Ole Miss in a bit of a shootout there, as a lot of the SEC games so often are. 51-35, so a good start for the Gators there. The University of Central Florida, they beat East Carolina 51-28. In a bit of an upset, well, a massive upset actually, Kansas State, they beat Oklahoma 38-35. So that was a great win there for Kansas State. Oklahoma ranked 18, I believe. Is that going into that week or after that loss? Must be after that loss, because they certainly would have been ranked higher going into that week. Auburn, they're back. They beat Kentucky 29-13. Back in the ACC, Pittsburgh, who if you want to have a look at the University of Pittsburgh, they've got 3 or 4 really nice draft eligible players, including a couple actually that I think have sat out this season, but they're ranked number 24 in the country at the moment. They beat Louisville 23-20, but they're going to have some guys drafted this year. Pittsburgh, after not having too many drafted the last couple of years, and possibly even a first rounder or two. So they had a win there. Texas, in overtime, they beat Texas Tech 63-56. And how about this? This was an upset also in the first week back for the SEC. Mississippi State beat the reigning champions LSU 44-34. So Mississippi State, the Bulldogs, ranked 16 ahead of LSU now, ranked number 20. They've got a quarterback, Mississippi State, by the name of KJ Costello. Now, he's a guy who transferred from Stanford. He was at Stanford last year, got injured late in the year, I think, and transferred to Mississippi State. I think he was a graduate transfer. I stand to be corrected on that, but he definitely come from Stanford to Mississippi State to play in Mike Leach's offense. So it's his first year, Mike Leach, there at Mississippi State. He was at Washington State, where he had a couple of quarterbacks play under him and put up some really good numbers, including Gardner Minshew, who is now playing for Jacksonville and playing okay as well, or very well, in fact, for a fellow who was drafted in round 6. So KJ Costello, he is a name to watch in terms of the quarterback draft prospects this year. I know a lot of our attention goes to Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields, and I know there's a guy playing for North Dakota State who a lot of people are excited about. Trey Lance is his name. But KJ Costello, I think, is one to watch as well. And if that game's anything to go by, he's going to put up some huge numbers and possibly even be in Heisman Trophy contention this year. So a good win for Mississippi State, 44-34. They beat LSU. Oklahoma State, they beat West Virginia 27-13. Cincinnati beat Army 24-10. Georgia are back in action. They're ranked number 4. They beat Arkansas 37-10. Alabama, they made light work of Missouri. The poor old Tigers, they beat them 38-19. In the ACC, a lot of people are excited about the Miami Hurricanes. They've got some nice players too, and they had a big win over Florida State. They beat up on them 52-10. I had a bit of a look at that game. That was the game on ESPN, and they do indeed have some players that are going to play on Sundays, possibly as early as next year. They're ranked number 8, Miami, and they had a good win there. Texas A&M, they beat Vanderbilt 17-12. Good win there for the Aggies. Tennessee, ranked number 21. The Volunteers, they beat South Carolina 31-27. And BYU, they're ranked number 22 as well. Interesting to see BYU ranked. They beat Troy 48-7. So college football is back up and running, and the SEC is back up and running with some big upsets already in just the first week of action. So that's college football. Now to get to your questions. I've had some questions sent through from you guys. If you want to send through some questions to me, you can find me on Twitter at theboylives_26, or you can just type in my name, Brent Sternberg, and I will get back to you. The first question here is from John. After the Chiefs asserted themselves as the best team in the AFC last week, who, in your opinion, is the number 1 team in the NFC? Well, that's a really good question, actually, John. I think I know that the AFC for a long time was ruled by the Patriots, and now we think Kansas City are going to be this new dynasty team. But the NFC has been wide open for a long time. My pick coming into the year was the New Orleans Saints. They were my Super Bowl pick. I'm not willing to jump off the Saints, but I'm starting to see some things that I don't like, although I must admit I was a little bit, I didn't feel as bad after their performance last week against Green Bay, who, to be honest, Green Bay are probably the team that I would have earmarked as the front runner for the Super Bowl, which is interesting because they were the candidate for regression for a lot of people. I know a lot of people were expecting the Green Bay Packers to come back down to earth, but in the second year there under Matt LaFleur, Aaron Rodgers looks like he's as good as ever, and Aaron Jones is running around, and Devontae Adams, when he's healthy, is catching a lot of balls, and the defense is doing some good things as well. So I think probably the Packers, through 3 weeks, they deserve to be the favourites in the NFC, and I think they're going to have another good win on Monday Night Football this week. But keep an eye on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're getting better and stronger every week, and I think they're a well-rounded football team with the options that Tom Brady has to throw to, and the defense as well. I said this before, people don't talk about the Tampa Bay defense, but this defense is good, is loaded with talent, particularly in the front seven. So the Packers are the number 1 seed at the moment with a little asterisk next to Tampa Bay. Watch Tampa Bay. The next question from Sam: who has been the biggest disappointment so far in season 2020? I think 2 teams playing each other tomorrow, actually, Houston and Minnesota. I'm going to say, though, Minnesota. I think that they are a more talented team, on paper at least, than Houston. Houston probably they do have the better quarterback, but I think Minnesota are coached better and they have a better offensive line, although that's not saying much, but they have more talent on defense and more talent at the skill positions as well. And I said earlier on, Minnesota, it's time for them to panic. I mean, if they go down to Houston and they're 0-4, we're looking up at 2 teams that are undefeated at the moment and may well be undefeated coming out of week 4 as well. Minnesota, for me, have been the most disappointing team. I know a lot of people picked them to win that division this year. They're not winning that division this year. They're coming from a long way back in Minnesota. So that was from Sam. This is from Aaron. Can the Bears make the playoffs with Nick Foles? And what do they do next year at quarterback? That's a double barrel question. Well, can they make the playoffs with Nick Foles? I want to say no, but they've started 3-0, and if they beat Indianapolis tomorrow, they'll be 4-0, and they'll be almost halfway there. I think teams can probably, with the extra playoff spot, get into the playoffs with 8 or 9 wins this year. I'm not sure Nick Foles will play out the season, though. I think at some point they may come back to Mitch Trubisky. But can they make the playoffs? Yes, I think they can if their defense looking like they're starting to get back to their best, and they've still got Allen Robinson there. The offensive line's okay. It's hard to say because I don't know if they're going to go with Nick Foles from here on in, but if they do, I think they can make the playoffs, particularly with an extra playoff spot. They're a really interesting one, the Bears, because they've been winning, but they've been winning close games. And, who would have thought that a team would be 3-0 when they've had the quarterback issues that they have? What do they do next year? They probably draft someone. I think if they make the playoffs, they're going to have a pick towards the back end of round 1, and it'll be interesting to see the quarterback prospects available. I think they probably part ways with Trubisky. They go with Nick Foles as the in-house sort of bridge quarterback, and they probably draft someone, but I don't think they're going to have a pick that can nab them, one of those really early guys like Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields. So that's what I think the Bears will do. Can they make the playoffs? Yes. And what do they do next year at quarterback? Probably draft someone, I think. Aaron, thank you for your question. The final question: is there a problem with the Ravens winning big games, and is it becoming an issue mentally? That's from BJ. That's a good question, BJ. And I said earlier that that loss had a similar sort of feel to the 2 playoff losses under Lamar Jackson. I will say they had a big win last year on, I think it was Sunday Night Football. It may have been Monday Night Football when the Patriots come to town and the Patriots were undefeated and the Ravens ran all over them. But they're just going to have to get over whatever mental sort of thing they've got, the Ravens, and win these big games. And maybe it's just the Chiefs. Maybe they just have a thing with Kansas City and they can't beat them. But they're still a good team, Baltimore. I'm not hitting the panic button just yet. But they've got some issues in those big games against those big teams, don't they? Anyway, they're your questions. Thank you very much. Hit me up on Twitter if you want to send me through some questions for next week at theboylives_26. Before I go, a quick recap on the games on TV tomorrow. Both the games at 4 a.m. on 7 Mate and ESPN will be the Cleveland at Dallas games. So that's interesting. They replaced the Pittsburgh-Tennessee game. They could have given us another game and another option to see 2 new teams, but oh well. Buffalo and the Raiders are on 7:30 at 7 Mates. Get up to watch a good game there. New England and Kansas City are on at the same time over on ESPN. And then, of course, Sunday Night Football on ESPN, Philadelphia and San Francisco. And Monday night, Atlanta and Green Bay on ESPN. Can the Packers blow another lead? I don't think I'll have to worry about it this week because I think they'll be behind from go to woe. Rightio, that's it, guys. Enjoy week 4 action tomorrow, and I'll see you back again here on KC Radio 97.7 FM, 10 p.m. next Sunday night for more Talkin American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.